The intergenerational report, released yesterday but talked about for almost a week now, contains some dire warnings for the future of Australia's economy. With a forecast for 40 years of straight deficits based on current policies, a completely unsustainable position, it demands action. It demands change. The real issue is what that change should be. In his press club address yesterday, Treasurer Jim Chalmers offered lots of generalised, warm and fuzzy platitudes, lots of words that make people feel good, like motherhood and apple pie. But he didn't offer a lot of answers. So in many ways, the lesson comes from what isn't in his speech. It won't be meaningful tax reform. And though the word productivity was used plenty, there weren't any productivity-boosting proposals on the table. There was also no indication that Labor would abandon the productivity-sapping industrial relations changes that it's been pushing, like the same job, same pay idea, or the out-there ban proposed on bosses phoning staff outside work hours. There's no suggestion that he plans to rein in welfare. Indeed, the report indicates it will actually grow on a per-head basis. And the figures show that the cost of the care economy is about to explode. And yet, despite calling it an opportunity, Treasurer Chalmers doesn't go anywhere near tackling the heart of the issue. Let's face it, an economy dominated by people being paid by the government to look after each other is a nation destined for poverty. A nation needs primary production and then the improvement of those resources for them to be sold for the nation as a whole to succeed. If it's just passing the same money in a circle with the government taking a clip at each pass, as a nation we will end up very poor. So let's do what the Treasurer doesn't have the courage to do. We need to revisit how much of the loving and caring part of life we want to have done by the state and how much of it we want to do within our families. Now, I accept this won't always be viable, but our expectation of cradle-to-grave government support, from childcare to aged care, and with parental care leave and disability support care in between, demands big government. And it means that for almost all of our lives, we are operating in the expectation that government will be helping us with the cost of living. Now, someone has to pay for it. That's just a fact. So if you don't like that, and you accept that it's unsustainable to be subsidising most people for most of their lives, well, then we need to change the parameters. But putting aside the dollars for a moment, there's even better reasons to be as engaged as is possible in caring for our loved ones in the vulnerable stages of life. No one will deliver better welfare outcomes than the care of a loving family. The horrors of abuse that were revealed, for example, in the Aged Care Royal Commission were only possible because families weren't present and engaged with their loved ones' daily lives. But there's another reason. These are the moments, the trials and tribulations, but also the joy and bonding that makes the relationships that constitute a meaningful life. You know, we talk a lot in our country about poor mental health, about people struggling with finding meaning. There's a large and growing body of evidence that more family, more connection and more relationship is a big part of the answer. But the policy solutions that are offered for all of these social problems seem always to demand more big, impersonal state programs and less family and community responsibility and connection. Now, none of this is to diminish the difficult and good work that's done by the people who serve in the care sector. They are really special people, and population trends mean there's always going to be demand for their efforts in this sphere. But perhaps it's time for us to question whether it is the best course for everyone and whether we want it to be the norm for all. It's time we questioned whether institutionalised childcare is necessarily the best thing for all in our society. There will be some children for whom it really is the best educational start and a chance to provide safety and stability that isn't present in the home. But for many parents and children, it represents a dubious cost-benefit equation and a lot of heartache in separating parent and child during those early years. There's a substantial body of evidence that learning from engaged and present parents and a strong attachment to family are deeply beneficial foundations that pay real dividends later in the life journey and that just can't be replicated in the childcare environment. And as any parent who has had to engage with the curriculum knows, there are significant advantages to delaying the time at which the state gets to start indoctrinating your kids. Which really does come to the point. Labor are priming you to accept higher taxes and bigger government for the long haul, painting it as the unavoidable consequence of an ageing population. In practical terms, the report we've just received means that's 60% income taxes to fund the government carrying you through all of the challenges of life, and at least partially denying individuals the hardships, but also the triumphs and resilience that comes from being able to solve our own problems. And all of that is based on the assumption that government will do the job well and for a reasonable price. And in my experience, big centralised governments rarely do either. It is so important that we stop now for a moment and notice that big government that does everything and promises to solve all our problems is not the only option available to us as a nation. We could make a decision, as a nation, yes, but also as individuals living in it, to do more for ourselves, to take care of our own kids, to live within our means as a nation, to provide our parents and grandparents a loving and supportive and caring home for as long as is possible, giving them the loving care at home they gave us when we were young. And in doing so, we could learn from one another, appreciate and grow from one another, and enjoy one another. It would reduce the need for the frantic churn of dollars that comes from this modern model of living that leaves too many people, and particularly women, frazzled and wondering what the point of it all is, especially when all it seems to get us at the moment is inflation in the cost of everything. It could just be that big government severing our core relationships and stepping in to insulate us from the ups and downs of life from which we build our strength and earn a sense of accomplishment is a large part of the problem. And it would be a mistake to try and solve problems that have been largely caused by big government with yet more big government. But it seems that's the path that Treasurer Chalmers wants to take.